Long before he was Genghis Khan, the conqueror of nations, he was Temujin, a boy born in 1162 on the harsh steppes of Mongolia. His world was one of constant survival. Endless grasslands, bitter winters, and rival tribes locked in blood feuds. When Temujin was just 9, his father, Yasuge, a tribal chief, was poisoned by enemies. With his death, Temujin's family lost protection and status. His tribe abandoned them, leaving Temujin, his mother, and siblings alone in the unforgiving wilderness. They survived on wild roots, berries, and whatever small animals they could catch. Temujin's childhood was marked not by privilege, but by hunger, cold, and danger. To make matters worse, as a teenager, he was captured by rival clans, shackled with a wooden collar and treated as a slave. Yet even then, he refused to be broken. He escaped, proving his resilience and determination. These early years of suffering shaped Temujin's character. He learned to endure hardship, trust few, and rely on strength and cunning. Out of hunger and betrayal, the seeds of the future Genghis Khan were planted.
As Temujin grew into his teenage years, he sought alliances to protect his family and secure his future. He formed a bond with powerful tribes, believing loyalty could give him strength. But on the steppe, loyalty was fragile, and betrayal was always near. When he began to rise in influence, rival clans saw him as a threat. Former allies turned against him. In one clash, Temujin was captured by the Taichiud, enemies who feared his growing power. They placed him in a heavy wooden collar, a symbol of humiliation, making escape nearly impossible. For days he was guarded, mocked, and treated as a slave. Yet Temujin's determination never wavered. He waited, observed, and found opportunity in a moment of carelessness. With the help of a sympathetic guard, he broke free, fleeing into the wilderness under the cover of darkness. This daring escape marked a turning point. Temujin understood that survival depended not on trust in shifting allies, but on absolute loyalty and discipline among his own followers. From this moment, he would forge bonds not through empty promises, but through strict rules and unshakable loyalty. His hardships as a betrayed youth carved into him the lessons of betrayal, resilience, and the importance of building a brotherhood that could never be broken.
After escaping captivity, Temujin began rebuilding his life with one goal: to rise above betrayal and chaos. Unlike other tribal leaders who relied on bloodlines or noble birth, Temujin built his power on something radical for his time: merit. He sought out men not for their family name, but for their strength, loyalty, and skill. Even those of lower status could rise in rank if they proved themselves in battle or service. This system was revolutionary on the Mongolian steppe, where tribal politics usually favored only the elite. Temujin's charisma drew people in. He promised protection, shared spoils fairly, and rewarded loyalty. Those who followed him saw that he was different. He valued trust and ability over tradition. In a land of shifting alliances and endless betrayals, his leadership inspired devotion. Gradually, Temujin's band of warriors grew into a disciplined force. They were bound not only by loyalty to him, but also by loyalty to one another. They were no longer just a tribe. They were becoming the foundation of something far greater. In these early days, Temujin was not yet Genghis Khan, but through his ability to turn hardship into strength, he began the transformation from a wandering outcast into a leader whose influence could no longer be ignored.
The Mongolian steppe was a land divided. Rival clans fought endlessly over grazing lands, herds, and power. Loyalty shifted with the wind, and treachery was as common as battle. To rise above this chaos, Temujin realized he had to break the old traditions that kept the tribes weak and divided. He began by dismantling the strict clan hierarchy. No longer would power be inherited by birthright alone. Instead, Temujin promoted men based on merit, loyalty, and skill. A shepherd who proved himself in battle could rise above a noble-born warrior. This radical idea drew the ambitious to his side and broke the grip of the old aristocracy. Temujin also reorganized his forces. Instead of units based on family ties, he created groups of 10, 100, and 1,000 men drawn from different clans. This destroyed tribal rivalries and forced warriors to see themselves as part of one united army, not just members of a bloodline. His reforms also extended to law. Through the Yassa, a strict code of rules, he ensured discipline, loyalty, and order. Theft, betrayal, and disobedience were met with swift and harsh punishment. On the steppe, where betrayal was common, this new system created a rare sense of trust and security. By reshaping the steppe in this way, Temujin laid the foundation for unity. For the first time, the scattered Mongol tribes began to see themselves not just as rivals, but as part of a greater whole. This was the beginning of an empire.
In the year 1206, after years of battles, betrayals, and victories, Temujin stood on the brink of destiny. The great tribes of the Mongolian steppe, once his fiercest enemies, gathered at a grand council, the Kurultai. Here, the leaders of the clans recognized his unmatched leadership, discipline, and vision. At this historic gathering, they declared him Genghis Khan, the Great Khan, ruler of all Mongols. This was more than a title. It was a transformation. The boy who had once been an outcast, hunted and betrayed, had now risen to unify one of the most divided lands on earth. As Genghis Khan, he embodied a new kind of power, not born from noble bloodlines, but forged through hardship, loyalty, and strategy. His leadership was absolute, and his reforms had created a united people bound by law and merit. With the tribes consolidated under his banner, Genghis Khan no longer thought only of survival. His vision turned outward, to conquest. He saw the fractured kingdoms beyond the steppe as opportunities. The horsemen of Mongolia, once scattered raiders, were now an army destined to shake the world. The birth of Genghis Khan was not just the rise of a leader. It was the rise of an empire that would stretch farther than any before it.
Genghis Khan was not just a warrior, he was a revolutionary strategist who reshaped the art of war. His genius lay in turning the Mongol way of life, fast horses, harsh survival, and adaptability, into an unstoppable military machine. The Mongol army moved with lightning speed, covering distances no enemy thought possible. Each warrior carried multiple horses, switching mounts to stay fresh, enabling them to travel up to 100 miles a day. Armies that believed themselves safe behind mountains or deserts soon learned there was no escape. But it was not just speed. Genghis Khan mastered the art of psychological warfare. He spread terror ahead of his campaigns, using fear as a weapon. Entire cities would surrender without a fight, preferring mercy to destruction. He spread rumors, staged fake retreats to lure enemies into traps, and used captured enemies as human shields.
His strategies were built on discipline. Every soldier, from the humblest warrior to his most trusted general, knew their place and followed orders. Loyalty and ability outweighed bloodlines. Merit was the only measure. Through mobility, cunning, and the careful use of fear, Genghis Khan transformed his cavalry into the most formidable fighting force the world had ever seen. His enemies called him ruthless. His followers called him invincible.
Behind Genghis Khan's sweeping conquests was not just raw power, but a framework of discipline that held his empire together. He understood that chaos destroys nations, and so he forged order from the law, a code known as the Yassa. The Yassa was more than a list of rules, it was the backbone of Mongol society. It outlawed theft, adultery, betrayal, and false testimony. It dictated fairness in trade and demanded absolute loyalty to the Khan. Punishments were harsh, often death, but they ensured unity and obedience in a world where betrayal had once been common. In his army, Genghis Khan created a system where loyalty was rewarded and treachery was crushed. Unlike most rulers of his age, he did not give power to men simply because of noble birth. Instead, he promoted warriors based on skill, bravery, and loyalty. A shepherd could rise to the rank of general if he proved his worth. This broke centuries of tribal hierarchy and bound men to him personally. Every soldier was organized into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000, with leaders chosen for merit. This system made the Mongol army both flexible and disciplined, capable of responding instantly to commands. Soldiers were forbidden to abandon comrades in battle, and loot was shared fairly, preventing jealousy and betrayal. Through the Yassa and his unwavering focus on merit, Genghis Khan created more than an army. He built a loyal brotherhood, bound not by blood, but by trust and discipline.
If there was one campaign that revealed the full fury of Genghis Khan, it was his war against the Khwarezm Empire. What began as a mission of trade turned into one of the bloodiest campaigns in history. In 1218, Genghis Khan sought to open peaceful relations with the Khwarezm Shah, sending a caravan of merchants laden with goods. But instead of diplomacy, the Shah's governor accused the envoys of spying, seized their goods, and executed them. When Genghis Khan sent ambassadors demanding justice, the Shah went further. He killed one envoy and humiliated the others. This was a fatal mistake. For Genghis Khan, ambassadors were sacred, and this betrayal demanded total revenge. In 1219, he launched his invasion with unmatched precision. His army, though smaller than the Shah's, used superior tactics, speed, and deception. The Mongols divided into multiple forces, attacking from unexpected directions, cutting supply lines, and spreading terror ahead of their advance. Cities fell one after another, often through a combination of siege warfare, psychological tactics, and brutal retribution. When a city resisted, the Mongols showed no mercy. Thousands, sometimes entire populations, were executed. Survivors spread stories of horror, amplifying the Mongol reputation and causing many towns to surrender without a fight. Samarkand and Bukhara, jewels of the Khwarezm Empire, fell in flames. In Bukhara, Genghis Khan is said to have addressed the terrified citizens, declaring that he was the punishment of God for their sins. The Shah fled westward, abandoning his people, and died in despair. The conquest of Khwarezm was not only revenge, it was a lesson to the world. Betrayal against the Mongols would be answered with absolute destruction. From this moment on, Genghis Khan was no longer just a conqueror of the steppe. He was a force of unstoppable terror across continents.
For Genghis Khan, China was not just a neighbor, It was both a rival and a prize. The Jin Dynasty in the north controlled vast cities, riches, and fertile lands, while the Song Dynasty in the south held even greater wealth but faced threats from the Jin. Early in his career, Genghis Khan launched devastating campaigns against the Jin. His forces employed brilliant siege warfare, adapting Chinese techniques of catapults, scaling towers, and even early forms of gunpowder weaponry. Unlike the nomadic steppe wars of mobility, here he proved that the Mongols could defeat fortified cities just as easily as open-field armies. The Jin Dynasty, arrogant and dismissive of the nomads, soon learned the cost of underestimating him. City after city fell, with Beijing, then called Zhongdu, besieged and eventually captured. Entire regions were brought under Mongol control, and the Jin's prestige crumbled. But Genghis Khan also showed political cunning. Instead of attacking the Song dynasty in the south, he pursued diplomacy. He recognized the Song's hostility toward the Jin and formed a temporary alliance, exploiting their rivalry. By positioning himself as a partner rather than an immediate enemy, Genghis ensured that the Song remained neutral while he dismantled the Jin. This strategy was classic Genghis, using politics as effectively as the sword. He knew when to wage war, when to negotiate, and when to turn one enemy against another. His campaigns in China were not only about conquest, but also about learning. The Mongols absorbed Chinese technology, administration, and siegecraft, tools that would fuel their future expansion westward. By the time Genghis Khan was done, the Jin dynasty was broken, the Song were temporarily safe, and the Mongols stood as masters of northern China.
Genghis Khan did not simply fight wars. He reinvented the art of warfare. His genius lay not just in the bravery of his warriors, but in the systems he built to make his army an unstoppable force. One of his greatest strengths was the use of spies and intelligence networks. Before launching campaigns, Genghis would send scouts deep into enemy lands to gather information, mapping rivers, cities, and supply routes. Merchants and travelers loyal to him acted as informants, spreading false rumors to confuse opponents while reporting back with valuable secrets. To Genghis, knowing the enemy was half the victory. Equally revolutionary was his communication system. The Mongols created a vast network of mounted couriers known as the Yam. Relay stations were built across the steppe where fresh horses awaited riders. This allowed messages to travel hundreds of miles in a matter of days, faster than any other empire of the time. Orders from Genghis could reach distant generals almost instantly, ensuring a level of coordination his enemies could not match. Then came the siege technologies. Traditionally, nomads struggled to conquer fortified cities, but Genghis solved this by adopting and perfecting the techniques of the peoples he conquered. Chinese engineers, Persian craftsmen, and Arab mathematicians all contributed to the Mongol war machine. They built giant catapults, trebuchets, and battering rams, hurling stones, fire, and even diseased corpses into besieged cities. The combination of mobility on the steppe and engineering in sieges made the Mongols unique. They could strike fast in open battle and crush even the strongest fortress. In every campaign, Genghis Khan showed the world that war was not only about strength, it was about strategy, information, and innovation. His methods would echo across centuries, influencing military tactics even in the modern age.
For all his ferocity in battle, Genghis Khan was remarkably open-minded when it came to faith. In an age when empires often rose and fell through religious strife, he chose a different path: tolerance. Within his empire lived Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, Taoists, shamans, and Jews. Instead of forcing one religion on his subjects, Genghis declared that all beliefs had a place under his rule. To him, loyalty mattered more than creed.
Priests, monks, and scholars were granted tax exemptions and protection, ensuring they could serve their people without fear. He often sought counsel from holy men of different traditions, not for worship, but for wisdom. He listened to Buddhist lamas on morality, Muslim scholars on law, Taoists on balance, and shamans on tradition. For Genghis, truth was not confined to one faith. He believed the eternal blue sky guided all paths. This policy of tolerance was not just kindness, it was strategy. By allowing freedom of worship, he removed one of the biggest causes of rebellion. Conquered peoples saw in him not just a conqueror, but a ruler who respected their gods and their way of life. While Europe fought bloody crusades over religion, Genghis Khan built an empire where a mosque could stand beside a church and a monastery could thrive near a shaman's shrine. It was this embrace of diversity that helped turn his empire into the largest land-based dominion in history, a realm where unity came not from sameness, but from respect.
Beyond his conquests, Genghis Khan reshaped the world's economy. The Mongol Empire stretched across Asia into Europe, controlling the heart of the Silk Road, the lifeline of global trade. Instead of letting it fall into chaos, he revived it, creating a network where merchants, travelers, and ideas flowed freely. He issued decrees protecting traders, granting them tax breaks and safe conduct passes. Caravans could move across thousands of miles under the protection of Mongol soldiers. Bandits and corrupt officials, once the bane of trade, were punished without mercy. The message was clear. Under Mongol rule, the road was safe. This policy sparked an economic revival. Goods from China, silk, porcelain, tea, traveled west. From the Middle East came glass, spices, and carpets. From Europe, silver and wool. Knowledge also moved. Astronomy, medicine, and mathematics crossed borders like never before. The Mongols even created a form of early international banking where merchants could carry paper notes stamped with the Khan's seal, valid across the empire. This made long-distance trade faster and safer. The Silk Road under Genghis Khan was not just about commerce. It was about connection. For the first time in history, such a vast territory could be crossed without constant fear of death or robbery. Centuries later, historians would say that Genghis Khan did not just conquer lands, he united the world through trade, laying the groundwork for globalization long before the modern age.
Genghis Khan's rule was marked by a sharp contrast, unimaginable brutality for enemies who resisted, and deep mercy for those who submitted. Cities that defied him faced complete annihilation. In Khwarezm, after Betrayal, entire populations were massacred. Tales spread of Mongol armies leaving pyramids of skulls as warnings to others. Resistance was met with fire, slaughter, and the erasure of names from history. Fear itself became his weapon, forcing cities to surrender before a single arrow was fired. Yet, Genghis was not a mindless destroyer. To those who surrendered willingly, he offered protection, prosperity, and even privilege. Skilled artisans, engineers, and scholars were spared, often integrated into his empire to strengthen it. Entire communities were left unharmed if they pledged loyalty. He believed in rewarding faithfulness. Soldiers who served with honor received a fair share of plunder. Commoners who paid taxes honestly were guarded by Mongol law. Even enemies who proved their loyalty after surrender could rise to positions of power. This balance of terror and mercy made his empire both feared and respected. Cities had a choice: defiance and destruction, or submission and survival. It was this duality, the iron fist and the open hand, that allowed Genghis Khan not only to conquer, but to rule one of the largest empires in history.
Behind the conquests of Genghis Khan was a powerful web of family ties, marriages, and succession plans that shaped the future of his empire. His first and most important wife was Berthe, whom he married young. After she was kidnapped by a rival tribe, Genghis risked everything to rescue her. Berthe's influence remained strong throughout his life, and her sons became his recognized heirs. Through strategic marriages of his daughters, he forged alliances, often demanding that their husbands fight in his campaigns, ensuring loyalty from entire tribes. Genghis had many children, but succession was not simple. In Mongol tradition, the empire could be divided among sons, yet Genghis sought to avoid fragmentation. He carefully chose his successor, Ogedai, his third son, respected for his wisdom and diplomacy. This decision surprised many, as it was not merely about seniority, but about who could best hold the empire together. His other sons also played major roles. Jochi, the eldest, faced doubts about his legitimacy due to Berthe's early abduction, creating tensions with his brothers. Chagatai, strong-willed and uncompromising, often clashed with Jochi. Tolui, the youngest, inherited the Mongol heartland and became the protector of the dynasty's traditions. Through his family, Genghis ensured the empire's expansion would continue long after his death. His descendants conquered lands from Persia to Russia, from China to Europe. Nearly every major Mongol Khanate, from the Golden Horde in the west to the Yuan dynasty in China, traced its power back to his bloodline. For Genghis Khan, family was both his strength and his greatest challenge. The empire he built with the sword, he entrusted to his heirs, who would both preserve and fracture his legacy.
Much of what we know about Genghis Khan comes from a mysterious text, The Secret History of the Mongols. Written shortly after his death, it was not meant for outsiders. It was a record for his descendants, filled with hidden details of his life, victories, and flaws. This text reveals a far more human side of Genghis than the fearsome conqueror remembered by his enemies. It tells of his childhood hardships, hunger, betrayal, and survival. It speaks of his deep bond with Berthe, his first wife, and how her kidnapping shaped his resolve. It even records quarrels between his sons, showing the struggles of succession and family rivalry. Unlike most royal records, it does not glorify him unconditionally. It includes moments of doubt, anger, and even mistakes. It describes his reliance on loyal companions, his punishments for betrayal, and his moments of wisdom when he spared defeated enemies. For centuries, the secret history was hidden from the world, preserved only in Mongolian circles, and later translated into Chinese. Western scholars did not discover it until much later, making it one of the most important and mysterious sources on Genghis Khan. Through this hidden chronicle, we see not only the conqueror, but also the man, a leader shaped by struggle, ambition, and vision. It remains the closest thing we have to hearing Genghis Khan's story told from within his own court.
The end of Genghis Khan's life is wrapped in mystery and legend. In 1227, during a campaign against the Western Shah dynasty in China, he fell ill or was injured. Accounts differ. Some say he died from wounds sustained in battle. Others claim he was thrown from his horse, while later rumors whispered of assassination or even poisoning. The truth remains uncertain.
What is certain is the secrecy surrounding his burial. According to tradition, his body was taken back to Mongolia under a cloak of silence. To conceal the route, soldiers killed anyone who crossed their path. Once the burial was complete, the soldiers themselves were slain to protect the secret. Horses were even ridden over the grave to erase all traces. No tomb, no monument, no marker was left. His final resting place remains unknown, hidden somewhere in the vast Mongolian steppe. Legends claim it could be near the sacred Burkhan Khaldun mountain, a place Genghis had revered since youth. Others suggest it lies along the Onon River, shrouded by forests. For centuries, Mongols honored his wish for anonymity, believing his spirit should roam free under the eternal blue sky, not be bound by a tomb. Archaeologists have searched, yet the burial site has never been found, preserving the greatest secret of the Mongol conqueror. Genghis Khan's death was the end of a man, but not the end of his vision. His successors carried his empire forward, expanding it into the largest land empire the world has ever seen.
If the death of Genghis Khan was shrouded in mystery, his burial was wrapped in even deeper secrecy and legend. Mongol tradition demanded that the great Khan's grave remain untouched, his resting place hidden from the world for eternity. According to one account, thousands of horsemen escorted his body back to Mongolia. Along the way, anyone who crossed their path was executed, ensuring no witnesses survived. When the burial was complete, those who dug the grave were killed. In some tales, even the soldiers who guarded them were slain, leaving no living soul who knew the exact location. To hide it further, horses trampled the earth until no trace of digging remained. The site is still unknown. Many believe it lies near Burkhan Khaldun, the sacred mountain of his youth, where he once prayed for survival. Others suggest a secret valley by the Onon River, surrounded by forests and guarded by spirits. Mongol legends claim that the land itself protects the tomb, with curses falling on anyone who dares to disturb it. Over the centuries, emperors, explorers, and archaeologists have searched, but none have found it. The tomb of the world's greatest conqueror remains hidden, untouched, and silent, a secret kept by the Mongolian steppe itself. For his followers, this was fitting. Genghis Khan had always belonged not to stone monuments, but to the sky, the land, and the people who carried his legacy forward. His tomb, unseen and unmarked, reflects the mystery that still surrounds his life.
When Genghis Khan died in 1227, he left behind more than conquests. He left an empire that reshaped the world. From the windswept steppes of Mongolia, his rule stretched across Asia, the Middle East, and into Europe, forming the largest contiguous empire in human history. At its height, the Mongol Empire spanned nearly 24 million square kilometers, linking lands and cultures that had never before been connected. It stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Black Sea, from Siberia down to Persia and India. No empire before or since matched its reach across so many civilizations. But its true legacy was not only in size. The empire transformed global history. By enforcing law and order across its territories, Genghis and his successors created an environment where trade, knowledge, and cultures could flow like never before. The Silk Road thrived under Mongol protection, connecting East and West. Chinese inventions like paper and gunpowder reached Europe, while Persian medicine and Islamic astronomy traveled eastward. This vast network of exchange laid the groundwork for the Renaissance,
globalization, and the modern world. Genghis Khan's empire was both feared and admired, a force of destruction, yet also a bridge between civilizations. His descendants carried his vision further. The Golden Horde ruled Russia, the Ilkhanate transformed Persia, and Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty in China. Together, they extended the Mongol impact across generations. Though the empire eventually fractured, its legacy endured. Borders shifted, dynasties fell, but the idea of a connected world under one system of law and exchange came from the foundations Genghis Khan built. The horsemen of the steppe carved not only an empire, but the beginnings of the modern, interconnected world.
The true impact of Genghis Khan was not only measured in battles won, but in the global shift he set in motion. By uniting vast regions under a single rule, he created the conditions for one of the greatest periods of cultural exchange in history. The Mongol Empire connected East and West like never before. The Silk Road became more than a trade route. It was a bridge for ideas, inventions, and cultures. Chinese technologies like gunpowder, paper money, and the compass spread westward. In return, Persian science, Islamic medicine, and European craftsmanship flowed east. Even foods, textiles, and languages blended along this highway of exchange. For merchants and travelers, the empire meant safety and opportunity. Under Mongol protection, caravans could cross thousands of miles with minimal fear of robbery. This stability revived global trade and laid the foundation for new economies in Europe and Asia alike. Culturally, the Mongols were surprisingly open. They absorbed knowledge from the peoples they conquered, employing engineers, doctors, artists, and scholars from across the world. This created a fusion of civilizations, mixing ideas that might otherwise have remained isolated. The ripple effects were enormous. Some historians argue that without the Mongol Empire's network of exchange, the European Renaissance may not have happened when it did. Others note that the Mongols introduced systems of governance, communication, and law that influenced future empires. Genghis Khan began as an outcast on the steppe, yet his conquests reshaped the entire globe, pushing humanity toward a more interconnected world. His impact endures, not just in the maps of the past, but in the ways our world is still connected today.
Beyond the battles, the laws, and the empire, Genghis Khan became a figure of mythic proportions. To his followers, he was more than a man. He was a force of destiny, chosen by the eternal blue sky to unite the steppe. To his enemies, he was a shadow of terror, a conqueror who could strike without warning and leave only silence behind. Legends say that Genghis Khan was born clutching a blood clot in his fist, a sign of greatness and violence to come. Some tales claim he had divine ancestry, descended from a blue wolf and a doe, the mythical parents of the Mongol people. Others whisper that he could ride for days without rest, sustained only by his iron will. Stories about his campaigns grew in the telling. Entire cities were said to vanish overnight, consumed by his wrath. Armies spoke of his ghostly messengers and horsemen who appeared like storms on the horizon. His use of psychological warfare fed these myths, making enemies believe he commanded supernatural power. Even in death, the legends continued. It is said that his funeral escort killed everyone they encountered to keep the location of his burial secret. Some claim a river was diverted to flow over his grave, hiding him forever. Others imagine his tomb guarded by curses, armies of spirits, or
hidden treasures waiting to be uncovered. Over centuries, Genghis Khan became both demon and hero. To some cultures, he remains a symbol of destruction. To others, a national hero, father of a people, and architect of unity. The myths around him blur the line between history and folklore, turning Temujin the man into Genghis Khan the legend, a name that still echoes through the ages.
Genghis Khan may have been a warrior, but he also left behind words that reveal his philosophy of leadership, power, and existence. His sayings reflect the harsh realities of the steppe, the vision of a unifier, and the discipline of a conqueror. Here are some of his most striking quotes. "If you're afraid, don't do it. If you're doing it, don't be afraid." A lesson in decisiveness. Hesitation was weakness in his eyes. Conquering the world on horseback is easy. It is dismounting and governing that is hard. He understood that ruling an empire required more than brute force. The greatest happiness is to vanquish your enemies, to chase them before you, to rob them of their wealth, to see those dear to them bathed in tears, and to clasp to your bosom their wives and daughters. Brutal honesty, his definition of victory, shaped by a warrior's life. There is no value in anything until it is finished, a call to persistence and completion. I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. His way of framing conquest as destiny. An action committed in anger is an action doomed to failure. Even in war, he valued strategy over blind rage. I am the flail of heaven. Had you not created great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you. He repeated this idea often, portraying himself as fate's instrument. One arrow alone can be easily broken, but many arrows together are indestructible. His vision of unity, the foundation of his empire. A leader can never be happy until his people are happy. Rare insight into his role as a ruler beyond warfare. Men are loyal while you make them feel safe and reward them for their service. His understanding of human nature in leadership. I am the flail of heaven, the chosen one to unite the world. His belief in his divine mission. A man's greatest work is to break his enemies and make his people flourish, the duality of destruction and creation. It is not sufficient that I succeed, all others must fail. A ruthless truth of his ambition. A leader should demonstrate the same discipline he demands of his soldiers. He ruled by example as much as command. Remember, you have no companions but your shadow. His philosophy of self-reliance in a treacherous world. Be of one mind and one faith, that you may conquer your enemies and lead long and happy lives. His constant reminder of unity as survival. The merit of an action lies in finishing it to the end. His respect for perseverance. A leader who does not listen to his people will eventually be surrounded by those who have nothing to say. Wisdom on listening and humility. There is no good in anything until it is over, echoing his belief that only completed deeds carry weight. With heaven's aid, I have conquered for you a huge empire, but my life was too short to achieve the conquest of the world. That task is left for you. His final message to his heirs, his legacy carried on by others.